SMQBs, this is episode 195. Welcome, listeners. Today it's just Pope and Rooster here with you. Everybody else is
Yeah,
traveling.
boy.
We've got 5 more episodes till we hit 200, and Pope's soft as a baby's behind skin gets his first tattoo ever. Right, Pope?
That'll be over my dead body, but well, I guess we'll have to see. Dead
All
or
right.
un, dead or unconscious.
Well, in case our listeners forget, we thought we all agreed that at episode 100 we'd all get the SMQB's logo tattooed on us. 3 of the 5 of us did that, and now we're coming up on the next round of 100. And anybody who knows Pope or Milk, apply the pressure because they need to step up. Pope, who you bringing
Week
to the bar this week?
Rooster, it's unorthodox, but I'm going to bring to the bar two of our good friends and fellow fantasy football teammates. I'm bringing one Zach Doug Mandel and Scott Bra Leonard because I want to hear how they're feeling after an amazing night of football last night. To our listeners, our fantasy football league was decided on the last play of the week on a dramatic touchdown to Zach Ertz, who I have on my screen behind me for Bison and for Doug. The odds of Zach Ertz catching a touchdown in that circumstance were so infinitesimal, Rooster, that the CBS computers had deemed the game over and said 100% chance for
I saw that.
Scott
That's when I
at
knew Bra was
Bone
going to lose when
Leonard
CBS
to
did that.
win and had victory snatched from the defeat snatched from the jaws of victory as Doug won our fantasy football and deprived Bra of his first ring. So I would love to take those guys, hear about it, and guess who's going to be providing the alcohol? That'll be one Tim Disciple O'Keefe, who is the loser of our fantasy football league and will be providing alcohol via a lemonade stand at a time to be announced later. So we could actually have this bar scene play itself out in a live stream, Rooster.
Should be fun. Should be fun. I was watching the game with my daughter and wife, both of whom are Commanders fans. Um, and I said to them, do you realize that the IB Fantasy Football League championship was determined by that pass? And in unison, they both said, well, we don't care about that.
Well, my
Oh,
wife
boy.
and I were both watching it, and we were both screaming when they got that touchdown.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Who are you
Um,
bringing?
I am going to bring KOC, Kevin O'Connell, coach of the Minnesota Vikings,
Yeah, good
and
call.
congratulate him on just an exceptional job turning that team, every aspect of that team around. The offense, the defense, mostly through the hiring of good coaches. And Sam Darnold's career, for God's sakes. I mean, apparently he's a quarterback whisperer. I'd just like to congratulate him and say I'll be really, excuse me, I'd be really impressed if he's able to do that with one Daniel Jones. We'll see. I doubt it.
Well, I mean, and ask O'Connell what his thoughts are. It's probably not in his pay grade, but does he want Darnold back next year, or is he ready to train JJ McCarthy,
I
who's
think
been
JJ McCarthy's the backup to
on the
Darnold next year.
sideline?
Yeah, he's got to be.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 14-2, right? And Darnold threw for something like 377 yards against a division rival Packers team that's really good. I mean, come on, don't be stupid. Don't you're going to throw that all away from for a rookie who many people think you overdrafted anyway?
Well, and I think Darnold was a free agent, 1 year free agent.
Yeah, he's a
Uh,
free agent next year.
so he is going to either get the franchise tag, get signed to a long-term deal, or be on the market.
Yep. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Based on week 17, there are some teams that weren't planning on maybe needing a free agent quarterback that now might
Yeah.
might need to be. Um, what I said to you guys by text was the effing Giants even suck at being bad. The one fucking job was to lose and draft Shador Sanders, who is signaling to them, despite all the rumors, yes, I'll come, when he went out and
Yeah, how did he
commissioned
do
a
that?
pair of New York Giants cleats to wear. I mean, oh my God, I'll get to that later during the punchable face segment, but they and the Raiders just shot themselves in the foot. And now it looks like the Pats are sitting in the number one spot and they don't need a
They don't
quarterback.
need a quarterback.
The Titans, do the Titans pick a quarterback with Will Levis? I mean, is he a flop or do you take another year on him?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on if you think Cam Ward or Shador Sanders is a franchise potentially all-pro quarterback. In which case, I think you would draft him. And Levis, he's the next Justin Fields.
Maybe, maybe. Who knows? I
But
mean,
the the
maybe the guy
Pats are
needs an
sitting
offensive line. Who knows?
the Pats are sitting pretty because they can trade down and get a haul, go get a receiver, get an offensive line to protect May. They definitely benefited from the Giants' stupidity in winning that game.
Well, you think they would stay pat and take Travis Hunter with the first pick?
I don't think so. I don't think because I think Travis Hunter, although he may play some uh, two-way and be a offensive threat, more on a special teams or special plays. I don't think he's going to be an everyday wide receiver, and you don't pick number one for a cover corner, which is what he is. I mean, he's great. I just don't think he's a number one pick.
So as we stand right now, it looks like the playoff teams are set, maybe with the exception of the 7 seed in the AFC. Um, Kansas City's getting the bye. Bills are number 2, Ravens 3, Texans 4, Steelers 5, maybe. Los Angeles Chargers 6, maybe. Broncos 7, maybe. But the
Yeah,
Bengals are still in it. The Bengals could knock off the Broncos if they win next week and the Broncos lose.
and the Dolphins lose.
Right.
Dolphins have tiebreak, so it's a really a long shot for Cincy, which probably to the benefit of the field because I think Cincinnati would be a tough out. They've
Mm-hmm.
lost some shaky games in the beginning, but I would not want to play a hot Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins right now for sure.
Much
Um,
rather play the Broncos who've lost 2
no,
straight.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, or or the Dolphins minus Tua or whatever. Yeah, but look, I think regardless of who's at that 7 seed, Buffalo is sitting pretty, um, and I just don't I don't see much competition for them. Um, Baltimore, uh, assuming that they can beat Cleveland at home. I mean, what the line on that Rooster I think is the highest of the year, 17 and a half.
Yeah. And
Uh,
Cleveland, unlike the dumbass Giants,
yeah, they're
aren't
losing.
aren't even masking the fact that they're tanking.
Right,
And
right.
they refuse to start Jameis Winston because every third game that guy could go off and throw 5 touchdown passes.
I mean, given the circumstances, it would be a historic upset for Cleveland to beat Baltimore at Baltimore and deprive them the number 3 seed. Um, and they'll probably play the Chargers. And we haven't seen Harbaugh coach yet. His second time around in the playoffs, I would say they're a dangerous team.
I think there's a lot of brinksmanship at the 5-6 spot in the AFC because you don't want to. I mean, you don't want to play the Ravens.
No,
If the Chargers can move up to the 5 spot with, if KC can beat the Steelers, is that who they're playing?
no. Cincy
If
Steelers is that's the
yeah,
big game.
Cincy's totally incentivized to play their asses off in that game. Russell Wilson looks like crap again. Um, so since he beats the Steelers, the Chargers need to win
They play
and
at
move
Las Vegas.
and yeah, and
Oh.
take the 5 seed so they can
Right.
play the Texans, who are
Right.
in a free fall. The
Right.
Texans are horrible. You want to play the Texans over the Ravens every day of the week at this point.
KC is hoping the Chargers don't get in that slot.
Yep.
They do not want to see the Chargers in their first game.
Similarly, in the NFC, Washington has every incentive to play hard to get out from having to play. They don't want to drop to
Philly,
the 7 seed and play Philly.
new.
Um, so they can either stay at 6 and play the Rams, or move up to 5 and play maybe
And the Rams
the
are not playing
Bucks.
well right now. I mean, they're struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Washington has a pretty clear path if they beat the Cowboys, and if they can't beat the Cowboys as bad as they're playing right now, then I guess you got the playoffs, but you're not playing like a playoff team. They should win that fairly easily, I would think. Um, and then then if they beat the Rams, then they get winner of Philly and Green Bay.
How about Green Bay?
They
They were looking pretty a couple weeks ago,
Yeah,
and now they find themselves having to play Philly in round 1, which is the last team I think in the NFC you want to play, maybe behind Minnesota. I'm not quite sure about who I'd be more afraid of, Minnesota or the Eagles. Um, but
well, I can
Green,
tell you, Philly is not excited about playing Green Bay. I mean, look what Green Bay did to Dallas just last year, first round. Just came in and Jordan Love, Aaron Jones. Of course, he's not on them anymore. They got Josh Jacobs. I mean, they just torched him.
right?
And if you believe our buddy House, Jalen Hurts is on his deathbed, so he may not be able to play. And from the dirtiest hit in the history of the NFL.
And it's Greg Olson's fault. Was that right?
Right, yes. And then, Pickett has broken ribs, which he had before the game, but they're even worse now. They broke him worse, I guess, on another dirty late hit. Uh, so maybe Tanner McKee will be their quarterback, Rooster.
Pope, you and I are the losers of the SMQBs
I
this
know,
season.
right? I know.
The Bucks, Milk's Bucks,
Well,
Bison's Commanders, and
I'm not gonna
House's Eagles are all in, and we're out.
I'm not gonna Pope jinx because that's, I guess, the new thing. I'm not gonna Pope jinx the Bucks. They still have to beat the lowly Saints, because if they lose to the Saints, they're going to be out because the Falcons will take care of Carolina. That's
I
the
don't.
one thing we hadn't talked about.
Yeah, I don't know. Carolina's surprisingly good all of a sudden. I know they got spanked by the Bucks, but the Bucks are a good team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Carolina goes in and beats Atlanta after Tampa Bay loses, because I haven't looked at the timing, so I don't know who they'll know. I think most of the games are all at the same time at noon or 1 o'clock Eastern. Um, but Tampa is, assuming Tampa wins, they're going to host the number 2 best team in the NFC, maybe the NFL, the loser of Detroit, Minnesota. That is not a matchup that I would relish if I was Tampa Bay.
No, no way.
I mean, do we assume that Detroit is going to beat Minnesota?
I don't know. I mean, I've been discounting the Vikings all year, and I'm not going to do it after what they did to the Packers.
Yeah,
That's Packers are a solid team, and the Minnesota looked good against them.
they
And
did for
Darnold looked
three
good
and a
too.
half quarters.
Yeah, Darnold looked really good.
I'm telling you though, if Cam Akers hadn't made that, it was not a great pass. If he hadn't made that catch, I think that Green Bay wins that game. I think they go down and kick a field goal. So is Minnesota showing a little leaking a little oil there? I don't know. Detroit gives up 35, 40 points a game. That this game could be, and it's the final game of the year, Monday night. It could be a shootout.
Shame for the Lions, like we discussed 2 weeks ago, early in the year before their entire defense got injured. They were
Yeah,
actually a good defense, leading the league in defensive points scored and takeaways. I think it's just a shame.
I mean,
Um,
I would say I'm assuming that Hurts will be playoff ready. Uh, it's hard to look at
what is
Philly.
his injury? Concussion?
Yeah, he has a concussion from hitting the turf after he was speared. But yeah, he was in concussion protocol. If that game had mattered more, I'm not so sure that he might not have been cleared. But he has another week because he's definitely not going to play in a meaningless game on next week. So he's got another week to recover. Um, I still think, and their defense is playing really well. Uh, I think an argument can be made that Philly is the number one team in the NFC. I mean, they're tied as far as win loss. Well, they have one more loss, but they'll be tied with the number two, whoever behind Detroit, Minnesota loser. And you know, Detroit has the defensive issues that aren't going to go away.
There's some coaches out there right now eyeing prospective teams. And if I were one of those coaches, I'd think twice about taking the Bears job. I mean, you're in a division with 2 14-2 teams. That's crazy.
And Green Bay,
And Green Bay.
who's
What's
11-5.
I guess you could lower all the expectations, during the interview. But my God, that division is solid this
I mean,
year.
the rumor is Ben Johnson, the OC for Detroit, has the inside track and wants it.
Well, that would be
So,
a good call. That would be a good call
I mean,
because
you're
a
not going
high
to turn that
profile guy
down.
like Vrabel, I don't think he wants to set himself up to be last place in a division
No,
unless it's the Patriots.
I don't think they're going to fire their coach. Patriots aren't.
They should. I think they will.
You think they
They're,
will?
yeah, he's
Okay.
terrible. He's terrible. He and the Raiders coaches maybe the two worst right now, and I think Dayball gets fired just because of the record.
He
But
should
I
be
think
fired. He should be fired for winning that game.
he's actually a pretty good coach, but this year has been a disaster.
That would
They
have been
really
epic if what is it, Schoen, is he your GM?
Shane, yeah,
Shane, if he had gone down to the locker room and fired Dayball on the spot for winning.
he should have. I mean, he should. Freaking Drew Lock went
Yeah, hey,
17 for 23 for 309 yards
four
and
touchdowns.
5 touchdowns. He
Five
ran one in
touchdowns.
too.
That's right. Is
Who would have
is he
predicted
the
that?
quarterback that you guys have been looking for? You
Yeah,
didn't know
I
you
mean, what
had the whole
happened?
time?
Where was he the rest of the year?
Well, he wasn't playing.
I guess Danny DeVito or whatever the hell his name
Yeah,
is.
you Tommy
Tommy
what's his face?
Cutlets
Tommy Cutlets.
was a better option in their mind. And that's because they were tanking. Somebody's not getting the message.
Right.
Anyway, I digress. So before we get off of the NFL, let's talk about things we learned going into the playoffs. Um, I'll start out with the KC Pittsburgh game. I relearned that Russell Wilson is not going to win you a Super Bowl at this stage of his career. I think Pittsburgh made a mistake going with him over Justin Fields as their starter. He's just not getting it done. He just basically throws moon balls these days. He doesn't scramble anymore. He doesn't run. All of his strengths are gone. I think Carson Wentz could have quarterbacked Kansas City in that game and they would have won. Let's talk about the Ravens Texans, 31-2, right?
Yeah.
Would you? What's going on with the Texans?
CJ Stroud has clearly gone backwards. Second year has been a disaster compared to his first. Um, giving up 31 points to the Ravens. Uh, a lot of teams are going to give up 31 points, but if you're a playoff caliber team like Houston should be, you should not be giving up that many points.
Right.
And I mean, I kind of look at the AFC as it's really shaken out in the last couple of weeks. I mean, we thought KC was going to stumble at some point. I mean, they kept winning. How many was it? 16 straight one score games now they've won.
Yep.
But that was an impressive show against Pittsburgh. And, maybe we're underestimating them. And again, they get the benefit of the bye, you get healthy. and you got to go. You got to go to Arrowhead. You got to go through Arrowhead and go in there and beat them. There are very few teams capable of doing that. I think, despite Baltimore, the way they're looking, I think we're all looking at a Buffalo, Kansas City again final in Arrowhead, and it's so hard to beat Mahomie in Arrowhead on a game like that. Do you see the in AFC shaking out any different right now?
I think the Ravens and the Chargers are the teams that would worry me
Yeah,
if I were Kansas City, and the Bills, particularly since the Bills defense is atrocious. And Kansas City struggles to put up a lot of points. Uh, right now, I mean, the Chargers put up 40 against the Pats, and it's the Pats. I get it, but they've always had a pretty decent defense. If it weren't for Kevin O'Connell, Harbaugh would be the clear coach of the year. I mean, he's turned that franchise around.
yep.
The other game that stood out to me for different reasons. Well, Green Bay, Minnesota was the marquee game, and it was, it came down to the wire, and Minnesota won 27-25. I don't care
I think it was
how.
27-10, and Minnesota had the game in hand,
Yeah,
uh, and then just let it slip away. And
yep,
almost, like I said, I think they would have lost
right.
if they hadn't completed that pass to Cam
But
Akers.
but this is a win is a win, and unlike the last time Minnesota had a good record when Cousins was the quarterback, it doesn't feel like the way we were talking about Kansas City earlier this year, where they're just lucky that they keep winning these tight games.
No,
Minnesota's winning tight games because they're up and the other team makes a comeback late. But they're a solid team. I mean, and the Packers are a damn good team. I wouldn't feel too badly about this if I were the Vikings. I mean, like I said, Darnold um, threw for 377 yards and was hitting guys other than Jefferson and Addison. You
and
know, they're like the greatest show on turf right now.
here's what I would be worried about if I was a Vikings fan. Uh, they haven't really played tough competition the last 8 or 9 games. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule, Rooster.
Except for the Packers.
Well, yeah, they beat the Packers at home 27-25. But before that, though, I mean, they played the Colts, the Jags, the Titans, the Bears, the Cards, the Falcons, the Bears, the Seahawks. I would be a little worried that they're not playoff tested going into, and of course they'll get a game against the Lions, but um, it'll be interesting to see how they hold up.
I think the Cards and the Seahawks were good and in it when they played the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean the Vikings beat the Cards by 1 and the Seahawks by 3.
Yep.
Yeah, so um, that's why I really think that if Philly's healthy, that they're the best team in the NFC.
Well,
And
that was another game I wanted to talk about,
oh, really?
only because of the legend Saquon. I mean,
Yes.
the Eagles put up 41 points against your Cowboys, and your
And they
defense.
really only put up 34. They had a pick six, but I
Well,
digress.
yeah, okay. So leaving Saquon 101 yards from breaking Eric Dickerson's record. Do you, if going into Week 18, the Eagles are a lock for the 2 seed, regardless of the outcome of their next game. Do you play Saquon if you're
No,
the
hell no.
Eagles
In
to
fact,
break this record?
I don't even let him dress out. No, no, and no. I mean, going into this season, what was the biggest concern we had about Saquon? His
Injury. I mean, every
injury.
year on the Giants, he had an injury to
Absolutely.
his knee, usually.
Yes. I mean, you're not going to win the Super Bowl without Saquon.
Nope.
And, individual records are great, but no, no. That would be malpractice.
Also, he's just
GM
not
and practice
he's not a
malpractice.
diva. He doesn't care about these records. He
No,
wants to
and
win the Super Bowl.
he said as much.
Yep. I mean, he is a great guy to have on your team.
I mean, look, I think we texted this. Saquon had more yards per carry, I think, than Dickerson for the season for 16 games, right?
Mhm.
On average. So, I mean, you could argue that it's he would have got 100 yards against the Giants, no question, were he to play. So he would have broke the record. But it would have been
He would
17
have,
games, and so there
he,
would have been an asterisk by that,
except that he
from
would have
my
done it in
perspective.
less attempts.
Right. Yes, I know. I mean, there's different measuring metrics,
Who
but
did
again,
Dickerson play for that year? Was it the Colts or the Rams?
Colts, I believe, but I don't know
So
for
they had
sure.
nothing going on besides him, and they were running him constantly. Whereas the
Yeah,
Eagles
yeah,
have, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith and
right. Who had a
all
great
kinds
game
of
against the
all kinds of
Cowboys?
other weapons.
Yeah,
So, oh, hey, look, Saquon Barkley is just amazing. I'm glad for him. Sorry, my Giants fucked him. They shouldn't have, and they're all gonna pay for it. They are. I think they're all gonna lose their jobs in part over the handling of
they
Barkley.
should.
Yep.
You don't let a guy like that get away in your own
Especially when the
division.
owner's saying to you, he's the most popular player we have. You better be right about this. And you
Yeah.
get nothing in exchange for him, and you pay all this money to keep a guy that you cut, who's now on the fucking Vikings practice squad as their
And
fourth
you play him
quarterback.
twice a year. He's in your damn division. It just couldn't be worse case scenario for them.
Oh, it could be. It could be. We're getting there.
Well, so who do you think right now? Who's your MVP?
It's either, well, there's three guys up for it, right? There's Josh Allen,
Yep.
Jackson, quarterback of the Ravens, and Saquon.
Yep. And then, Burrow's like a wild card. He's not going to get it
Yeah,
because of their
he can't.
record,
Yeah, I
but he's
don't think
having
he
a
can get it with
record
that
year.
record. Yeah,
Right, right.
I think
Not
it's
his fault.
I personally think it's Saquon because Jalen Hurts had a mediocre year, and the Eagles wouldn't be the powerhouse team they are without him. But I wouldn't blink at giving it to Josh Allen either because the guy's playing with no marquee receivers and a terrible defense. And having said that, I think it may be Josh Allen.
I would say the odds are Allen right now, uh, just because he's just having one of those years. But I think a great argument could be made for Saquon. Lamar's having a great year, but
I
it's not
think
his year.
Saquon's the best football player in the NFL right now. But Josh Allen may be the most valuable to his team. He lost his top two receivers last year, and they didn't replace him with anyone we've ever heard of.
Right.
I mean, we know who they are now, but and he didn't miss a beat. In fact, he got better. So there's a good argument for him. There are a lot of people out there saying that Jackson is not is getting dissed only because he's won it before. I don't think so. I think Josh Allen is having a standout year. The other game I wanted to discuss a little bit was Atlanta Washington last night.
Oh, how could
Hell,
we not?
hell of a game. Hell of a game. Um, what are your thoughts on Michael Penix? He's
He
second
showed me
start in.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, second start in. I think he's just getting better each game, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's better than Kirk Cousins
Oh
already.
my God. Well, I mean, they were talking about that. I think on the Bill Simmons pod about how if they had just started Penix 3 or 4 games before, Atlanta would have won the whatever the South by now. Um, those are some unforgivable losses that they had with Cousins. Um, yeah, I think Penix is a quarterback of the future, but how stupid do the Falcons look now by paying all that money for Cousins when they could have drafted Penix and gotten
Used
him.
all that money on
Yes,
offensive
offensive
linemen,
line.
defense. They have no
Yes,
defense.
yeah, secondary.
I
Uh,
mean, they obviously need the offensive line because they've got the equivalent of Saquon Barkley and Bijan Robinson,
right.
and you never hear the guy during the game. They're really rarely using him, and their defensive pass rush is pathetic.
They have great potential with Penix, I think, on offense next year. We'll see what happens to their defense. But I think we haven't talked about Jaden Daniels.
Odds on
You talk about
winner of
somebody who
Rookie of
has
the Year.
it. How
He's
is it
amazing.
not? How is it not Jaden?
He's the runaway Rookie of the Year. Even considering the year that Brock Bowers is having, it's not even close.
No,
That's how
no.
good Jaden Daniels is.
I mean, how many fourth quarter like wins has he brought? I mean, he's smashing all kinds of rookie records for clutch performance.
The one thing that all the terrible shit that I heard out of the Giants during that Hard Knocks series, the one thing I remember Dayball saying when they asked him his opinion on the quarterback situation, he said, I'd do whatever it took to get Jaden Daniels. And he was right. He didn't feel the same way about Caleb Williams. He clearly didn't feel that way about Daniel Jones.
Right.
But he was right. Jaden Daniels is just special. I think the only question mark was his stature. He's spindly, guy who looks like he could get broken in half pretty
Right.
easily. But he actually is fairly tough when he runs the ball. So
Yeah, I mean, he had 115 yards rushing last night.
yeah, I really hope
Dual
he
threat.
stays healthy and doesn't have the RG3 outcome because they're running the same plays for this guy. They are. They're running the RG3 plays.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't get hurt because he's special. And for the sake of my daughter and wife and one
Well,
of my sons, I
I want to
hope
say
the
that
Commanders are good for a long time.
I want to say that Daniels didn't have the history that RG3 did in college as far as knee injuries coming in, but I don't know if that's true or not. I believe. I mean, Daniels was what, a 4-year senior
Mm-hmm.
at LSU, so I mean he came in with a lot more experience than some of these other guys.
Yep, he did. He did.
All
He
right,
had a
move.
lot more throws than the rest of them. So, anything else on the NFL?
No, I mean I can't wait. This is the best time of the year, the first second
It's going to
round
be
of
crazy
the
next week.
playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be. There are going to be some crazy games next week. Really important games.
We'll look forward to the other three comrades coming and joining us for our NFL predictions,
Yep.
playoff predictions.
Well, and year-end segments that we typically do about
Yeah.
favorite moments, favorite games, etc. Sorry, I'm choking to death. Well, let's move on to our Plaxico locks, which for our listeners who aren't regulars, these are our attempts to compete with one another week by week on picking against the line, which we use the score as our line. And there have been people in the past who bet the opposite of what we've suggested and done quite well. But this year, I think we're doing really well. So going into this week,
Yeah. What are the standings, Rooster?
Milk was 10-5-1 in second place. I was 11-5 in first place. You and House were tied for third at 9-7, and Bison was bringing up the rear at 6-10. So this week, I think I did. I lost my lead to Milk by picking Seattle. I was thinking Seattle was going to play their asses off trying to get into the playoffs against the Bears, and they scored 6 points. They beat the Bears 6-3, and the line was 3.5, and I
That was
lost.
one of the worst games of the year.
Unbelievable. I mean, how could you put out that kind of
a
an
classic
effort
Thursday night game.
trying to get into playoffs? So I lost. I'm now in second place. Milk took his tried and true Joe Burrows and won, and is now 11-5-1 in first place. House took the Chargers at -4.5 against the Pats, and they destroyed the Pats, so he's 10-7. You took Washington -4 against Atlanta and won, so you're tied with House at 10-7. And Bison took the Bills -10 against the Jets, and they covered easily, so he's now 7-10. I was the only loss, so we were 4 for 5 in wins this year. Good week. So Bison is up first because he's in last place, and he is taking the Commanders -3.5 points against your Cowboys. You think that's a pretty good pick, don't you, Pope?
I do. I'm not saying the Cowboys have a lot of give up in them, but that was a pretty depressing loss for them. And
Is Lamb out for the year?
Lamb's, yeah, they sat Lamb for the year. Uh, they just don't have the firepower right now with Cooper Rush to move the ball like they need to against the Commanders, and they're not going to be able to slow down Jaden. So yeah, I think that's a good pick.
The so House is up next, and he's taking the Bills -3 against the Pats. Bills don't have a lot to play for. The Pats, but the thing is, the Pats I think are going to tank for the #1 pick, so the Bills should be able to cover that no problem, even if they're playing backups. You're up next, Pope. What's your pick?
This is just since I can't win it, this is just for fun, really. But I'm going to take the Ravens because I think they're going to pulverize the Browns, who won't even show up.
Yep, you're
So
right about that.
so according to my ESPN update, I'm giving 18 points, which is the highest line of the year. Give me the Ravens.
All right, I'm still in it, so I need to make a smart pick, unlike last week. I really was going to take the Bengals. But and shouldn't have let Milk jump me on the pick. But since he's not here, we can't do anything about it. I'm going to take the Chargers -5.5 against the Raiders. I think the Chargers are on a roll, and like I said earlier, they have every incentive to win to get out of their slot
Agreed.
and play the Texans if they win.
I mean, is there really any home field advantage in Vegas anyway?
Well, I don't think there's a home field advantage in LA or Vegas,
Right.
but
That's
the
like
Chargers
two nomad teams.
Chargers incentive is Texans versus the Ravens. Who do we want to play in the playoffs? They're going to play their asses off to avoid the Ravens in round one, I think. So I hope I'm right. And then Milk takes the Bengals -1.5 against the Steelers, and we'll see how we all do. Good luck, Pope.
Yeah, so I did some quick back of the napkin math, and the SMQBs are collective 49, 35, and 1 for Plaxico 2024. So were you to bet the ones that we have given you, you would be winning money, and probably a lot of it in money by now.
Yeah. All right. There you go. There you go. We're actually getting good at this. Who would have guessed? Pope, do you have a punchable face?
I don't have a punch, but I hear you do.
I do. I mean, I've been foreshadowing this, I guess, the whole episode, but I am going to punch Brian Daboll and the entire coaching staff of the New York Giants, who had one damn job this weekend, which was to lose to the Colts and pick Shador Sanders with the #1 pick in the draft. And what do? They go out and put up 40 something points, 45 points, and just blow out the Colts. Now I guess they can all beat their chests and say, please don't fire me. Look what we did. What you did was you screwed us. We're now picking 4th. And what are we going to do? We're going to sign a free agent quarterback or trade all our shit up to get Sanders or Cam Ward, who decided not to even show up for the second half of the bowl game this weekend. I mean, neither one of these top 2 quarterbacks are good enough to trade away the house just to move up and pick them, in my opinion. But if the pick falls in your lap, you got to take it when you're the Giants or the Raiders. Both teams can't even get losing right. They're incompetent at being incompetent. It's just ridiculous. And I'm just beside myself. So I know people are like, oh, these players want to play hard and win. Take them out of the game. If you see that Drew Lock is on a heater, take him out of the game. We're trying to get the #1 pick. Stupid. Anyway, we have one job right now, which is to draft a top quarterback, and we've blown it. So typical,
Well,
typical.
so what's the draft order now? It's Pats,
Pats, Browns,
Browns, Titans,
Titans, Giants.
Giants, because those are all teams with 3 losses,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Or 3 wins. So Pats are going to lose. Browns we know are going to lose. Titans are going to lose. So you're probably locked in at 4.
Yeah.
And can you
The
get a
only
quarterback at 4?
the only saving grace is the Pats don't need a quarterback, and maybe the Titans don't take one. I don't
Maybe
know.
the Pats trade down with y'all, but you're gonna have to give up something other than your number 4 pick and
So now
others.
we're trading up to the spot we were already in
Yep.
and losing more capital, which we don't have much of to begin with. This is
Well,
stupid.
and
Stupid.
the
Even
fallout.
the Eagles are not beneath tanking when necessary.
The fallout from that is, did you hear about Pat McAfee? Because he
Mm,
was a Colt. I mean,
yeah.
he tore into the Colt organization, said he was canceling his season tickets after that performance on Sunday. So there were really no winners in that game.
Well, sticking with shitty New York football teams, I'm also going to punch the Jets from the top down.
Like, why not?
Woody Johnson is maybe the worst owner in football right now. There were stories circulating last week about him basically trying to judge who should be picked in the draft based on their Madden rankings. And now I hear they're interviewing Ron Rivera for head coach
Oh
next year.
my god! Wow, you talk about retread.
Yeah, come on, man. Just stupid. Anyway, what we let's get off this negative New York business and talk about some pour outs for some pretty nice people.
Yeah, no lassos this week, but definitely a pour out. Um, Pour one out for Greg Gumble, who died of cancer this week. The longtime host of the March Madness CBS show. Always got fired up on Selection Sunday, Rooster. Usually my Tar Heels would be pretty high up as they revealed the brackets, and Gumble was the voice of the March Madness brackets. But in addition, I mean, he had a great career. I don't know if you remember it, but he was one of the hosts of the original Sports Center back in the '80s.
Oh, I do remember that. George
Yeah,
Grand and others, yeah.
yeah, Bob
The
Lee, and
with those awful yellow jackets
exactly.
covering
Um,
beach volleyball and all kinds of fascinating sports.
But he worked his way up. He worked at CBS for a while, did football, went to NBC when CBS lost football, came back to football when CBS got football, hosted the CBS show, the football show for a while. Um, but one of the generally nice guys in broadcasting, and this one really hurts. I know he didn't do March Madness last year, and they said, or earlier this year, and for the first time, said that they had some family health issues, and now we know what it was, that he was unable to because of cancer, which um, it'll never be the same without him going forward as far as March Madness goes. And then my other pour out is one for not for sports, but for the country. Jimmy Carter died yesterday at 100 years old. He was the oldest president we ever had. And, you know, he was president back in 1976, Rooster, when you and I could remember.
I voted for him.
Right.
My first vote.
Unlike some of the others on the pod, uh, remember when he was actually president. Um, Obviously, he's a one-term president. We could debate whether he was an effective president or not, but there's no question that he was the best ex-president that we ever had. He devoted himself. He was fairly young when he left the White House. Devoted himself to human rights. The Carter Center did so much good around the world. Um, in his 90s, I mean, he was in Dallas in his 90s doing Habitat for Humanity. building houses. Just our own Bison had an opportunity to meet him when he went to Plains, and says such a great guy, nice things about him. Sunday school teacher. People came from all over the country to go to his Sunday school classes, well into his 80s and 90s. So pour one out for Jimmy Carter. Um, they don't make them like him anymore.
A beautiful human being. Same with
Absolutely,
Greg Gumble.
100%.
I hope I look as well as Greg Gumble does into my late 70s.
Yeah, he was 78.
I would have said he was in his mid 60s at most.
Right. Well, Rooster, we pulled it off.
Yep.
No house, bison, or milk. Merry New Year to everyone. Hope your teams that are still alive do well next week.
And congratulations again to our fantasy football league winner,
Yeah,
Zach Doug for now Mandel.
incredible drama. Look forward to hearing all about it.
Well, we'll see everybody hopefully back here next show.
Special year-end show and NFL playoff preview show.
Yep. In the meantime, have a great New Year's Eve, everyone, and be safe. We're out.